Well, we're pleased to have our continuing series, Book Talks with the Dean, and we're delighted to have two of our three authors who have authored the book Building Mentoring Capacity in Teacher Education, a Guide to Clinically Based Practice. And so Dr. Beam is with us, Pam Beam and Dr. Dianne Gut. Welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for agreeing to engage in a conversation about your book. And I know you all have a long history in teacher education, and I think it would be good for those listening to just get a sense of your background. What made you decide to go into teacher education? A little bit about how you got to this point and why teacher education. Maybe a little bit about in the content area that you teach in. I know Dr. Gut's in special education, and Pam Beam is really one of our generalists and has expertise in a number of areas. And so tell us a little bit about how you came into the profession.
Okay, well, I was probably one of those old people who I knew I was going to be in teaching really early. So I participated in Future Teachers of America, which was a big deal when I was in school. And I did, actually, at that time, I was allowed to substitute teach at the elementary level. And so I kind of got my feet wet that way. And so I got my degree in physical education and health, and then my master's in educational administration. So I was teaching and coaching. I coached several sports and taught PE and health for several years. We moved here. I went into administration. From there, I got my PhD in curriculum and instruction.
Very good.
And I've been working with curriculum, probably K-12, for the last several years.
Yes. Well, we have been pleased to have you on our faculty here at Ohio University, and you have been an indispensable contributor to preparing the next generation of educators.
Thank you.
Dr. Gut.
My mother was a teacher, so I grew up playing school and started off as a general ed teacher.
Yes.
And did that for several years and realized that I wasn't meeting the needs of all my students, and so I pursued licensure in special education and taught that for several years in the Cleveland area, and then got my doctorate in special ed at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and then came here. So I've been in education for 30 plus years, and special ed and teacher ed for 22.
Yes, very good. Well, we are disappointed we don't have our third author here, but I want to say that he spent a number of years here at Ohio University as our department chair in teacher education, and has now gone on to be dean at Monmouth University in New Jersey.
Correct.
And so this has been a collaboration across institutions, but their history and your working together goes back several years. So we're delighted to have the two of you here and here at Ohio University. Well, let's go get into our book. Let me start by asking, really, what does mentoring mean to you? And in the context of your book, and from the perspective of the book, what does mentoring mean to you, and why mentoring?
Well, mentoring is a passion of mine. It's what I did my master's research project on and my dissertation. Being an administrator of a high school building, it became really apparent that not everybody comes in with all the same skills. And so for me, I've always wanted to attack any areas of deficit from the perspective of a mentor rather than an authoritarian. So for me, I believe the context of my looking at mentoring through the work that we did in the book was about building everybody up. And I think it's important to do that. It impacts the climate of everybody in the building with you.
Very good. Your perspective.
As a middle school teacher, I was serving as a mentor teacher to students from Cleveland State that would come in. And so I knew that I didn't have all the answers. And so following up on that, in terms of the book, we're taking people where they are.
Yes.
And knowing that everybody can mentor, everybody needs to be mentored. And so it's giving the tools, making sure that people have the tools and recognizing where the mentee is and just what they need.
That's a good philosophy, and interesting philosophy. So all three authors operate from the perspective, because some people hold the belief that not everybody can be a mentor, and I'm not good at being a mentor. But you're operating from the perspective that everybody has within them the capacity to do mentoring of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And
They
to
just
continue.
need the skills and the tools,
Yes.
which is
So
one of
this
the,
is what, so even for those who say, I've never been a mentor, I've never been very good at mentoring, this book gives them the tools and some skill sets and some guides into how to be an effective mentor.
Exactly.
Very good, very good. So let me ask this question in a different way. Why the book and why now? Why do you think mentoring, that there is a need for this book, and why now? Because I know you all have been, I know Dr. Gut has authored other books, but was there something that you saw in the field that was lacking? I'm just interested in the thought process and the perspective. Said, you know what?
It absolutely was generated based on the
Mhm.
experiences that I personally had in the field with my early field students.
Okay.
We did not see much in the way of mentoring for early field. It was like our teachers, even our gifted teachers who mentor our professional interns, just had no idea what to do with these early field kids. And what we did recognize through research and through our own experiences is that they needed to be in the classroom more often and for longer periods of time. And if that was going to be the case, then we needed to shore up where those deficits were.
Very good.
and it was the early research that really, where we looked at mentoring and what it looked like at the different levels, the pre-service and early field, student teaching or professional internship, and first year teachers.
And I know
what
you
that
both
meant.
did research, right, in that area.
Yes.
Where if individuals were interested in the research that you all did, Dr. Beam, Dr. Gut, where would they find that research? Where is that? Do you remember where that's published?
I don't remember where that one's published.
Yeah, it's actually in several publications
Okay.
because
Both
it
journal
started.
and textbook?
So it started the process of, and certainly it was one of the key pieces when Dr. Henning and I began talking about the workshops for mentoring, because we recognized that it wasn't just happening in Athens, but
Yes.
at all of our campuses with all of our mentor teachers.
Very good. Okay. Next question. What does mentoring look like across the continuum? I know that you've articulated that you began this look at mentoring with the early field experiences. I'm assuming that what skills are needed for mentoring in the early field may look different than what mentoring may look like, let's say, when someone is either at the beginning of their professional internship in teaching, otherwise known as student teaching, or at the end of their professional internship in teaching. So talk to us a little bit about what that continuum looks like with respect to mentoring.
It's often more directive at the beginning with the early field because they're coming in, many of them are coming in fresh with very few experiences. And so there's a lot more telling and modeling and showing and directing in terms of what needs to be done, looking at the rules, things like that. What's the setup of the school?
Yes.
How do those things work? And then it gets a little more like coaching after that.
And then we found at the end of the continuum, we were back to being more hands-off with our early teachers, our entry year teachers. And we, in our research, we were really questioning, like, why do you feel it necessary for you to take such a hands-off approach when you just mentored, coached a professional intern to a much more significant degree? And it was really about, well, once they turn that page to colleague, we feel like we've got to wait to be asked for whatever mentoring skills. But exactly what Dr. Gut was saying, we have to get better at recognizing that not everyone comes in the early field has to be directed. Some of them come in with real gifts already.
Okay.
And so what we tried to get the early field mentors to understand is figure out where they are, give them some opportunities to show you what they're already capable of doing, and then take them from there. Dr. Gut already mentioned, we want them to take the candidate, regardless of if it's early field or professional internship, and move them forward, not continue to reinforce a skill they already have mastered.
Yes. Yes.
And the same thing with entry-year teachers. They've come from different teacher preparation programs.
Okay.
So they may not have had a clinically rich experience.
Mhm.
And so they're going to be in a different place than somebody who maybe has graduated from a university that does have clinically rich experiences. So
Mhm.
they're going to need a little bit more support or different supports.
Mhm. So what are some of the skill sets that one needs to be an effective mentor? Some of the basic skill sets you think someone needs to be an effective mentor.
They've got to be a good listener
Okay.
and an acute observer and have a good handle on theory and practice.
Mm-hmm.
They also need to be good questioners. You know, we've talked about our mentor teachers have to recognize I no longer have to be so directive.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I need to ask some reflective questions. Why did you choose to do that?
Mm-hmm.
What made you decide on that particular activity today?
Yes.
How do you think so and so responded rather than, so how do you think it went today? No,
Mm-hmm.
let's get into
Mm-hmm.
what went well and what didn't go well. And so,
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to impact that tomorrow?
Do you find that teachers, I'm assuming that if a teacher takes a professional intern, they already have at least an innate desire to be an effective mentor. Do you find teachers, are there differences in teachers in terms of mentoring and I guess their openness to mentoring those who take pre-service teachers and those who don't? Kind of just.
One of the things that we asked people in our early research was, why do you mentor?
Very good.
And some of them responded, it's because it's an opportunity to give back.
Okay.
I wish I would have had a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And so they see that as a deficit that they could fill for somebody else to provide that guidance. Trying to think of some of the other reasons that
They really believe that they can learn something from
Yes.
the newest, the newest research, the newest field,
Mm-hmm.
technology.
Mm-hmm.
and so they like to have that as well. That doesn't mean that everyone who chooses to mentor mentors for the right reasons.
Yes. I'd like to think, because your subtitle is A Guide to Clinically Based Practice. Now, I know we engage in what we call the patent clinical model of educator preparation. Are there differences in opportunities, either number of opportunities or quality of opportunities to engage in mentoring in a program that engages in clinically based educator preparation, i.e. the clinical model, versus the traditional model of educator preparation?
There absolutely is. And what we found, and at least what my vision is that as they do it more, and as they're with candidates for longer periods of time, we actually move from the mentor to the coach. And that takes experience and practice and time and confidence building. And so the one thing that our clinically based practice does for teachers in the field here is that we've had an opportunity to build our mentor teachers' confidence on what they can give our candidates.
So what do you provide the mentor teachers by way of support or training? What do you do?
Well, we started with the workshops that we
Okay.
offered at all of the regional campuses as well as this main campus. And we did it at some places more than once
Okay.
because word of mouth told us that there were still teachers that wanted to partake of that.
Yes.
Then we put that online so that they could continue to have access to it. And then, of course, we also shared those same tools that are in the book with all of the members of the participants of the workshops. We also do that when we do observations. When we go in and we do observations, I know in AYA, it was that conversation with the teacher about where are they, what are you seeing, how can I support you, those kinds of opportunities also continue to happen.
Okay.
And the tools that are shared there have been shared broadly through our clinical experiences.
All right.
So all of the faculty are familiar with it. The Office of Clinical
Yes.
Placements, they
Yes.
use those tools.
So you actively, in this program, this is not just a book based on theory. This is a book where you have actually taken some of your research and the workshops that you do for teachers to help them become better effective mentors across the continuum, where you actually utilize those tools. You've designed workshops. They're online for teachers to take to continue their professional development in that regard.
And the tools, some of the tools were developed in the workshops
Very good.
with teachers,
With practicing teachers.
teachers.
Excellent.
So it's not just,
Yes.
we decided, hey, these are really good.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a
Cool idea.
practitioner's
tested
book.
and tried.
Right,
Right.
correct.
That
Very
is
good.
that is a book for practitioners.
I love that. That's great. Well, what are some of the ingredients that you think, or let me ask the question this way: what do you think are some of the most important takeaways? If there were one or two takeaways, maybe from each of you, 1 to 2 takeaways that you really want when individuals versus book, either you want to ensure they take something away from that, or what you are guaranteeing then they will find.
Cool.
It's not a cookie cutter approach. These are tools that people can take and help them to determine, what do I need to do to support this candidate or this mentee? Where is that person? So it will help you decide where they are, determine that, and tools to help you best meet that person's need, to help them develop, to move them forward. Because P12 or P16 student learning is our outcome. That's what we
Yes.
want. And
Yes.
so all of these tools and mentoring, that's what it's about. It's
Yes.
building that capacity so that we are having a positive impact on P16
Yeah.
student learning.
Excellent. Excellent.
And I would agree. I think the biggest takeaway, especially since my focus was on the early field, is that we've got candidates that through the use of these tools are having more experience interacting with the students and children that they would be responsible for down the road to make a real legitimate decision about this is where they plan to spend their life, and not so sterile, but indeed their engagement is enhanced by the opportunities that those tools provide.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like this is a book that definitely reaches two audiences for sure. Those who are educators, who want to definitely impact and work with teachers to expand upon their skills and their mentoring of the next generation of teachers. But it can also be directed towards teachers themselves, where there are tools here that they can use personally
Right.
to engage in effective mentoring. Are there other audiences that you were thinking about in the development of the book?
Well, definitely faculty in higher ed is also an audience that we appeal to, because the one thing that our research showed us is that there has to be a partnership
Yes.
between the teacher educators and the teachers in the field. I mean, we have a common goal in seeing the success of our candidates that impact the experience of the children in those seats.
And with a higher ed approach in teacher education, you need to have a coordinated approach to create that culture of mentoring. And I think the book really lays out how that can happen so that it's consistent, so that everybody's on the same page, that is a driving force, that everybody is constantly being improved because you're either mentoring or being mentored, and that's just the accepted culture.
Very good. Well, the book is Building Capacity for Mentoring, a Guide to Clinically Based Practice. And we thank Drs. Beam and Gut for joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.